So reading from Raya Khan. Too lazy to be ambitious, I let the world take care of itself. 10 days worth of rice in my bag, a bundle of twigs in the fireplace. Why chatter about delusion and enlightenment? Listening to the rain in the night on my roof, I sit comfortably with both legs stretched out. Well, last week, we started talking about the concept of God. We looked at those two ways of approaching God, from our minds, you approach God from your minds, and from our hearts, and really saw that both are appropriate in our development of a greater understanding. It's good to use your mind and also good to use your heart. But once you let go of the idea of God and come into the conscious reality of God, we begin to see that God's not about good or bad experiences, but God comes to us through all things that happen in our lives and asks us to respond to those things from the depths of our lives rather than just from the outer experiences. I said that when we come from our hearts rather than our minds, then we're able to start to respond in a way that puts us really in touch with everything that's around us. Wayne Teasdale, who's Thomas Keating, his colleague, said, "We are not of one mind, but we are of one heart." For me, the word that best describes this word is Pentecost, the birth of the Christian church, when the Holy Spirit opened the minds and the hearts of Jesus' disciples, uniting them in a corporate, mystical knowing that illumined their path during the fledgling years of the apostolic age. And so really that Pentecost, which was last week, that was the disciples' peak experience. And I spoke last week about those peak experiences that really illumine the path. I said, what it's really like, it's like being in our lives are like being in a large cave in darkness. And suddenly that illumination that occurs is like a flaming torch that is lit in the cave. And suddenly, with that enlightenment, we see all the dimensions of the cave around us. We see all the possibilities. We suddenly have an idea of what can happen. And then suddenly, just as suddenly as the flame is lit, it goes out. And then we're left in darkness again. Now, if we stay in our minds after experiences like that, then we think about the experiences, we yearn for more of them, we yearn for stories that talk about them, but we stay where we are in the darkness with our memories of what we'd glimpsed and what we'd seen. We imagine what is based upon what we've experienced. But if we instead manage to go into our hearts, then gradually a new way of seeing emerges. And that's what's called the way of the heart. When we decide to see from our heart rather than from our mind, we begin to appreciate reality from a new perspective. Like a whale sending out echo soundings to find out where it is, the way of the heart is sending out echo soundings from our hearts. And these soundings come back to us as wisdom that builds a picture that actually falls in line with what we'd seen when the torch was lit. But we feel it with our hearts. The reality confirms the ideas that we had about how things are all interconnected, how our enemy is but the shadow that we ourselves cast on the world. And we quickly see in using that way of the heart that each of our lives is completely unique. And we see that what we do matters in the context of each and every situation. We begin to experience being linked with the very ground of being that's within us, and we start to feel linked with God. It's a different sort of linking, and it's an experiential linking. And I think our search for God only really begins when we've grasped our place in the world. When we realize that that cave actually is within us rather than we being in the cave. I said last week that for me, that journey into the way of the heart began with the Lord's Prayer. And I think that that prayer perfectly describes both the cave and the way that we approach living within that cave. It describes the reality. And I think it enables us to begin our journey, into the way of the heart. And for me, this is how it begins. The description in the Lord's Prayer is a description of that cave and our place within it. When you say Father of us, the first words, you get a sense of yourself as being a part of something greater than yourself. You're not alone. Father of us, the one who is in the heavens. And suddenly you place, the heavens is everything that is experienced out there. And suddenly you place Father of us, the one who is in the heavens. We are with that divine reality in that cave. Father of us, the one who is in the heavens, hallowed be thy nature. And suddenly our lives then become, the point of our lives is really to worship, to give worth to that universal consciousness that's all around us. Father of us, the one who is in the heavens, hallowed be your nature. May your kingdom come. You're giving up to the workings of the order in the universe. It's not about your life. May your kingdom come. May your will be done as in heaven, so on earth. May I conform to that reality. Give us this day our bread from above that gives our whole life wisdom, meaning. Give me wisdom. Tell me what to do. Show me how to be. Each of these phrases is showing us how to be within our lives. Cancel our debts as we cancel the accounts of those indebted towards us. Let me not be attached to anything that I've done or anything anyone has done with me. Let me be free within that cave. And let us not be led into temptation, but rescue us from evil. May I not go nitpicking around the cave just to find one thing and get involved with it. For the kingdom, the power, and the glory are yours. Everything within that cave, everything that there is a part of something greater than myself. Now and forever, and it's beyond time. So that description of the cave and the way that we exist within it starts us off. It gives us, and that's, I believe, why Jesus gave it to us. It gives us the perfect place. But once we've done that, once we've actually arrived in that, we then have to decide how to operate within that. That gives us an idea of the perspective and what's going on. The prayer is a perfect aid to our navigation. We get a picture of the terrain within which we exist. And the next stage is to actually begin the journey. When you get that, the existence of the cave and the where we are, how do we start to come from our hearts rather than from our minds? Well, of course, a meditation practice, and I always bang on about this, is the perfect way because it takes our attention from our minds into our hearts, where the desire to survive and make the best of any situation. Our minds want us to do that, want us to survive and make the best of any situation. Our hearts want to engage with reality in a loving way. Very different ways of doing it. And the way of the heart is the way we enter into a relationship within our lives that's not just about Nicholas first, or Bruce first, or Will first, making sure that we get the best out of every situation. That's what our mind wants. I want to get Nicholas first, the best out of every situation. Instead, the way of the heart takes each situation and experience and says, how can I bring love to this moment? How can I bring love to this moment? When we're in a painful situation, we don't try to get out of it as fast as we can in the way of the heart, or try to push that pain onto someone else. No, we treat the pain as we would treat joy. We have it. We don't make a judgment about it. We welcome it as we'd welcome any other experience or situation. As in that famous Rumi poem, The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door, laughing, and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from the beyond. That lovely sense that everything that comes our way is sent as a guide from the beyond. The way of the heart is foremost a welcoming of what comes our way. And then it's looking at the most loving response to whatever's going on. We take time to pause and not let the mind come in to find a way out. Instead, we look for a loving response. Those wonderful words from Viktor Frankl. Between stimulus and response, there is a place. There is a space. And in that space, between stimulus and response, is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. The way of the heart is the way of looking for a loving response and then giving it. That love links us to the love that's at the very center of the universe. Just as the universe, everything around us, was given with no expectation of return, given in love. You know, for me, to give something with no expectation of return is to love. When we love, we give with no expectation of return. There's no bargain. There's no waiting for something to happen. There's no trying to make things go a particular way. You just give. And the universe was given with no expectation of return. So we give in the same way. And when we do that, we link ourselves to the universe in that love. And through that, we link ourselves to God, whoever she may be, because we know that God is love. That central love is the manifestation of the divine. And it is through this realization, this experience of ourselves within the context of love, that we begin to see how everything is intimately connected and that we are all of one. We experience it in that love. And this is the wisdom that gradually comes to us through the way of the heart. We see our place in a unitive world. That wonderful line from Proverbs 4. Wisdom is supreme. And you know, the effect of the way of the heart is wisdom. Wisdom is supreme, therefore get wisdom. Though it costs you all that you have, get understanding. Esteem her, and she will exalt you. Embrace her, and she will honor you. She will set a garland of grace on your head and present you with a crown of splendor. The way of the heart is the way of getting wisdom. But it's a process that doesn't come immediately. You know, in my decision to start my practice and to cultivate the way of the heart rather than just thinking about enlightenment and all that sort of stuff, I gradually learnt that wisdom. I saw that in responding from my heart rather than my mind, the outcomes were different and unexpected. I began to let go of wanting particular outcomes to be a certain way, and saw that what eventually came my way might even be better if I just let go. I remember once leaving a job, and as I left the job, they said, "What do you think is a fair settlement? What do you think we should be?" And I said, "You give me what you think is fair." And as I was arguing that, I noticed the amount went down. They thought, right, we've got somebody here. But actually, I ended up with something that left me in the perfect situation to be able to join the church. And that's eventually how I got here. And it just put me out of the right door. When I got married late, I think it was 43 or something when I got married. And it was a real bane of my life. I wanted to get married. And it was, now it's great not to have that feeling. But when you're single and you want to get married, it's a pretty, horrendous thing. And you're always looking everywhere. Those of us who are single know this. And I remember at some point in my life, around the way of time, I had to let go of that. I can remember consciously letting go of that desperate wantingness and just saying, I didn't say que sera, sera, but I thought, what will be? I thought, well, whatever's going to happen. And quite soon after that, Heather came along. I remember thinking about letting go of that whole thing and then being alone for the rest of my life. And quite soon after that, Heather came along. Heather's my wife, I'm married. And I began to learn that what came my way in my life, everything that came my way, was what I was uniquely being asked to respond to lovingly. And as I did that, I began to feel the walls of the cave and realize that there was a fundamental integrity to my life. Literally, the word integrity, literally an intactness or an entirety. That's what integrity means, an intactness or entirety. There was a wholeness about my life that somehow worked and put me in touch with love. And although much of it was painful and still is, that pain was mine, and I could use it to bring love into the world. And this led me into the knowledge of interconnectedness that I'd already seen in my own Pentecost experience that I spoke about last week. That way of the heart is the way of sending an echo sounding from our hearts to our lives and getting a sense of the nature of reality by the way those soundings come back to us. It meant that when things got difficult, I could respond in a loving way. And through that love, feed myself and those around me. And that in turn began to give me a picture of Father of us, of that bit from the Lord's Prayer. I got a different picture of that Father of us, the one who is in the heavens that I was seeking. The nature that I was hallowing was somehow contained in the love that I was a part of through following the way of the heart. And so I was able to have a picture of that which was different to that which was given by the flame in the cave. And in that, I was a part of that cave. I saw differently that I was a part of it, that it contained me and it contained all that I contained. And I was not just an observer, but I was instrumental in the very life of the cave itself. I was a part of it. To follow the way of the heart is to abandon that me first frame of mind and to take up the role of being a living sacrifice. It is in each of our lives that we burn to illuminate not some, other flame, but we ourselves are the flame that other people see. We have to become that in our lives. It's not the flame that we see and think, oh, that's all connected and things. We have to become that flame. We have to become a living sacrifice. Literally, as I've always said before, sacre ficio, made holy in the light that we ourselves cast in the world. The way of the heart is the way by which each of us becomes the light of others who follow, because we are the wick that burns with the love of God that is at the center of all things. The way of the heart is the way by which we give ourselves in our lives to all that surround us. We allow the universe to give us what it will, and then we attempt to respond from our hearts rather than from our minds. And in doing so, our lives become not about survival, but about being a portal of love in the world. That's why that poem from Ryo Khan is so apt. Too lazy to be ambitious, I let the world take care of itself. 10 days worth of rice in my bag, a bundle of twigs by my fireplace. Why chatter about delusion and enlightenment? Listen to the rain on my roof. I sit comfortably with both legs stretched out. He's completely detached from outcomes. The things that are important in his life are not enlightenment or illusion. They are rice, the bundle of twigs, the rain, and the comfort of sitting comfortably with both legs stretched out. This is known as the rocks are hard and the water's wet form of enlightenment. The enlightenment which just says that rocks are hard and water's wet. Well, we don't seek anything out in our lives. We just have to allow life to come to us and then give back compassion in return. That is what it is to live the life with integrity, to have the intactness and the entirety of life come to us, knowing that whatever happens, we can give back love, as is the purpose of our life. It's always said that God is love. And so in living in love, we are already beginning to touch the face of God, that God that we're looking for. And next week, we'll look at how this can inform the way that we understand God and the nature of reality. Thank you for listening. I've finished banging on now. Let's just put our attention outside ourselves just for a few moments now, and just to consider, giving our love from ourselves into the world at the moment, just maybe with our eyes closed. Well, I do like this idea of not having to effort at things, that things naturally come out in following that way of the heart. And there is an integrity about the way things are. I've got a little story I'm going to read to you about it. But I put this microphone here. I know no one ever wants to come say anything, but while I'm saying it, if you want to consider the possibility, you might want to join in a conversation, that would be great. But this is from Stephen Mitchell's second book of the Tao. And it's a lovely little story, just that gives you an idea of what we're talking about here. Ching, the master wood carver, carved a bell so intricately graceful that all who saw it were astonished. He carved a bell stand that was so intricately carved that all who saw it were astonished. And they thought that a god must have made this bell stand. The Marquis of Lu asked, "How did your art achieve something so unearthly beautiful?" "My lord," Ching said, "I am just a simple woodworker. I don't know anything about art, but here's what I can tell you. Whenever I begin to carve a bell stand, I concentrate my mind. After 3 days of meditating, I no longer have any thoughts of praise or blame. After 5 days, I no longer have any thoughts of success or failure. After 7 days, I'm not identified with a body. All my power is focused on my task. There are no distractions. At that point, I enter the mountain forest. I examine the trees until exactly the right one appears. If I see a bell stand inside it, The real work is done. All I have to do is to get started. Thus, I harmonize inner and outer. That's why people think that my work must be superhuman. That idea of effortless and yet rooted in that sense of the work, in his sense, is the work of meditation. And I think, for all of us, that's the situation. It is if we can root ourselves in the way of the heart, if we can actually concentrate to a point where in our practice or wherever we are aware of the way of the heart being our priority, then as we go about our lives, we are constantly reminded that our duty, our work, is just to respond in love in all situations, whatever comes our way. And then it's effortless. Then there may be pain, but there is simply the response in love. Anybody like to respond in any way? In love, of course. Ward! Lovely to have you with us.
For many years, I've said that my spiritual journey is 18 inches. It's from my head to my heart.
Yeah.
And now as we're coming out of this pandemic, and just to look around and see in 3 dimensions how lovely it is to have fellowship again. And I visualize it like a cocoon, really a chrysalis, but we've been in this darkness and now we're coming out and we're going to have a big bonfire when we can burn all
the bonfire of the masks, yes.
But I just think that we have to have a reboot. We have to start again and realize how important it is for the fellowship and the relationships and to see in 3D and to see smiles, not just in the eyes, but on the mouth.
Thank you, Wood. I so appreciate that. I appreciate it. Lovely having everybody here. And those of you at home, I know you're sitting in your pajamas and you're muting me when necessary, but do come and see us here. It is fantastic when people do come in. Anybody else like to say anything? Oh, Nancy, thank you. Yes, take your mask off when you're speaking.
I just want to share kind of a recent business experience.
Yeah.
So I came from a background where it was always push, 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 make it happen, And it worked for me, to some extent, back then. But my husband and I, we own a business now, Mountain Freshies. We distribute this beautiful organic produce. And when COVID hit last year, I really wanted to get involved in helping families access it who couldn't necessarily afford it. And so in my push, push, push mode, I was like, we're going to contact people, we're going to make this happen. But I was seeing very little results with that. And coming around the spring, basically calling, but everybody was in so survival mode with COVID. They were just doing what they needed to do and nobody was calling me back. And so recently I was chatting with a friend and I was like, I'm feeling very frustrated. Like the weight of the world is on my shoulders and trying to make this happen and it's not happening. And they gave me very good advice where if you're feeling frustrated and the weight of the world is on your shoulders, you have to shift your mindset from make it happen to let it happen. And I was like, oh, that's such a great reminder. So I came home with that, just really embracing that because it really spoke truth to me. And the minute that I shifted that mindset from make it happen to let it happen, guess what happened? The phone rang. A government entity had a grant that needed to be spent, before the end of June, and they're supporting families like throughout this valley. And it's just such an amazing feeling of, yes, this is coming together and it's coming to me now. I didn't need to chase it down. And so we're super excited in the next month to support these programs. And then, 3 days later, the phone rang again, and somebody else in a different area of the state of Colorado, same situation. So I feel like by embracing the let it happen, not make it happen, and just getting so excited and being prepared now to step up and fulfill this is exactly what you were speaking to today. So really meaningful to us.
What a lovely story, Nancy. Thank you very much. Nancy, fantastic. And very round of applause for that as well. That was a very lovely story. And so appreciate you saying that. Anyone else? Or should I quit while I'm ahead? Oh, yes. Fantastic. Thank you. I think this is important to have a proper conversation. Yes. There we are. You can take your mask off.
Me to do this big time, so I'm doing it.
You can take your mask off. Yeah.
I like the party of we're going to burn these. I've been saying that. Yeah. Well, I've had some health issues for a while, and I've been forced to go into that because nobody can help me.
Yeah.
And So I'm going, okay, I'm going to go at a deeper level, because I love the deal about living from your heart, and it all being about love, because that's a gift that came to me naturally. And so that one's easy for me. Now, the rest of the living part has never been easy for me. So I guess now it's just a conversation. I mean, I don't have an ending. I'm in process. So mine is about the journey.
Yes.
And I guess that's it. Yeah.
Do you know, I think that, like the chap with the twigs and putting his legs out and 10 days of rice, for all of us, it is about the journey, really.
Yeah.
We don't know where it's going from and we don't know where it's going to. But if we can arrive, as you're talking about, in the journey, if our arrival is in the journey, then our life becomes meaningful and everything becomes relevant to what is going on. And we're not worried about what's going on out there or what's happened behind. And, we'd love to support you in that. And thank you so much for sharing that as well. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Great.
Hello, everybody.
We have a little thing clapping like they used to in Est after. Those of you who've done Est, clap after the end of it. Great. Thank you so much indeed.